Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, Josh Gross joins us. He's publisher of Beverly Hills Weekly. A lot of parallels between the Las Vegas Strip and Beverly Hills. Coming up next on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Hello, is this D&D Roofing?
Yes, it is. How may I help you?
You did such a great job on my roof. May I speak to the owner?
I am an owner.
Oh, can I speak to your supervisor?
Sure.
How may I help you?
I love your work. May I speak to the owner?
I am an owner. We're all owners. Well, that's why at D&D we work so hard to keep your home safe and sound.
Oh, no wonder.
D&D Roofing and Sheet Metal. Local, employee-owned, here for you.
Retail's impact on Nevada's economy? Enormous. 8,600 businesses, large and small, employing 145,000 workers. And last fiscal year, retail paid tax on nearly $60 billion in sales. We're the Retail Association of Nevada. We support retail, we help it grow, and we mean business.
RANNV.org.
Pro Group Management specializes in providing industries with the necessary components to satisfy and exceed workers' comp requirements. Every business has unique needs and specific regulations. Pro Group Management stays ahead of the curve, providing up-to-date services to keep your industry in top form. Discover how we simplify your tasks, improve efficiency, and reduce expense to keep you moving in a positive direction. Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Truck drivers are some of the hardest working people you'll meet, delivering over 70% of America's freight and 92% of Nevada's. When there's a natural disaster, they're delivering critical supplies to help those communities recover and rebuild. Every sector of the economy and our nation's military rely on truck drivers. So let's take a moment to say thank you. On the open road or city streets, our truck drivers are rolling to make our economy and our nation stronger. Trucking moves America forward.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're always pleased to welcome back to the program Josh Gross. He is the publisher of Beverly Hills Weekly. Pleasure to have you back on the program, sir.
Sam, it's great to be back.
I had a lot of emails after we published our guest list for this week saying, Beverly Hills Weekly, why? And I said, well, think about it. Las Vegas has all this shopping that is reminiscent of Rodeo Drive, international tourism, great restaurants, high end. I said, there are a lot of parallels between Beverly Hills and Las Vegas. So tell me, what's happening in Beverly Hills?
Well, I think that's true, Sam. And I think, the high-end retail is having a real hard time right now. Many of the stores were closed for several weeks. Then they started with a curbside service, and now most of them are open. But see, the problem with curbside and high-end retail is you don't exactly expect to go curbside to buy a $2,000 handbag, right? You want to go into the store, you want to have the full service experience that you have with high-end retail. And in that sense, I think the Vegas retail is having a lot of the same issues.
So at this point, break it down for me. What is the tourism normally? Because Beverly Hills is obviously a huge tourist town, as well as being a locals town. What's the percentage? Is it 80% tourists, 20% locals, or is it a higher number of locals?
I would say that's probably about right. And remember, it's predominantly Europe and the Middle East. By that I mean, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, etc. And all those folks can't come over right now. So that's not only affected the high-end retail, but it's affected the high-end hotels, which are not operating at the same occupancy that they would have. And in our case, our city budget very much relies on what's called a transient occupancy tax, TOT, which is that tax that the high-end hotels pay. And unfortunately, that's significantly down this year because of the drop in tourism.
I was staying recently at a Westin in the Gaslamp District in San Diego, and they were running at 8% occupancy. I mean, that's a fright. Normally hotels run at 50 to 55%, unlike Las Vegas that can be up in the 80s and 90s on a regular basis. They're not at that level now, but that's normal for them. 8%, how do you even stay in business?
Yeah, I think it's tough. And I think in a lot of cases, they're having to reinvent their business model. To be honest with you, the high-end hotels did not really cater that much to locals besides having events in the hotel, for example, in the ballroom, that sort of thing. There are no big events right now. So they're finding ways to keep going, but clearly that business model is going to have to change if they're going to persevere into the next year. Who knows how long this is going to go on? Even a couple more months in some cases could be very damaging to the bottom line of those hotels.
Okay, so between the hotels and the retailers, is your sense from talking to people in the community that you're going to see real devastation over the next couple of months?
I think so. And I also think one sector that isn't coming back anytime soon is commercial leasing. Okay, because between the work from home, which obviously is very significant, and even prior to the pandemic, a lot of those retailers were having a very hard time competing with the online, competing with the big box stores. It's very hard for some of the boutiques and some of the smaller stores to make it. My office, for example, is on South Beverly Drive, which is kind of the main drag for locals here in town. And there's significant vacancies up and down the block. Even just 2 years ago, Sam, you couldn't get a parking space. If you wanted to go to California Pizza Kitchen or you wanted to go to Chipotle, you couldn't even park. Now, today, it's almost like a ghost town. And even some of the biggest names that have been there a long time, Pete's Coffee, Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, they're all vacant. And that's quite significant for the time that I've been here.
Some of the airline numbers are just frightening. BA, in the last 24 hours as we're taping this, announced that they are doing about 5% of their normal business, laying off 10,000 employees. I tried booking flights to DC for our annual Nevada Newsmakers Goes to Washington trip, and the only airport that Southwest is flying into at this point is Baltimore. You can't even get to Dulles or Reagan. And so with the lack of flights, this is even cutting back on the potential for domestic travel.
I think that's true. I've flown Southwest a couple times since the pandemic, and I will tell you, they're doing a good job of the distancing. They don't use the middle seats, which I think is a great policy. By the way, why that wasn't written into the PPP legislation, I'm not quite sure, because as you know, not every airline is doing that distancing, and I do think that's something that should come with the deal. But I think, again, they're just trying to maintain a couple of flights. The ones I've been on have been fairly full, not completely empty, and a little bit more so with every month. When I was flying in April, the planes were pretty much empty. When I'm flying in July, August, there's more activity than there used to be. So, my hope is that the airlines are going to slowly start to come back. But again, as you know, retail, hospitality, airlines, they're all tied together. And when one is hurting, they're all hurting. I think that's what we're seeing right now.
In Las Vegas, we're seeing the hotels and the convention authority coming up with interesting plans, especially for midweek, because it looks like, according to my sources that I've been talking to in the last few days, that weekends are okay, not great, but okay, but midweek is dead. And so what they're doing is they're marketing to people and saying, hey, if you're doing remote work, come and be in a cabana at one of our hotels and we'll provide additional services to help you, but you can have a much better experience working via remote from our hotel than you can from your home, and plus you get to get out of your home. Are you seeing things like that coming out of the Beverly Hills Chamber at this point?
We're not, but I think it's a great idea. And let me add that, look, even when the pandemic's over, I think work from home is here to stay. A lot of people love it. It doesn't work for my business. It doesn't work for a lot of media type essential businesses. But if you do have the kind of business where it works for, it's great. I'll also tell you the LA traffic, the notorious LA traffic is significantly less than it used to be. And of course, that's because of work from home. So if that's one of the silver linings of the pandemic, maybe not such a bad thing. I still think there's some camaraderie in the office community that, you want to go to work, you want to chat with your coworkers. That isn't quite the same, obviously, when you work from home. But when you look at some of the other benefits, particularly the traffic and the lack of a commute, and if you're able to make it work from home is a great thing. So I think that's certainly something maybe they want to look into. But no, we haven't quite seen that here yet. That would definitely be an interesting project, though.
You know, one of the things that has concerned me since the beginning of the pandemic has been some of the social costs. And yes, for a certain amount of people, working from home is a great thing, not having to commute, maybe relocating to a lesser expensive home because you can telecommute. But, you know, problems with child abuse, spousal abuse, these are real situations. And, you know, I don't think it's being reported on nearly as much as actually what's occurring. What are you hearing?
Oh, yes. And of course, the suicides are unfortunately skyrocketing. Same concept. Look, you've talked about it on the show before, but people like to communicate with other people. That's a basic human right. It's not something that's unusual. So I agree with you. I think it's very unhealthy in some cases. And I think even for those people who do work from home, there needs to be some level of social interaction, because otherwise you're basically living under house arrest. And that's a very disturbing trend. So yes, I agree with you. There's a lot of other social implications here. Let me make one point, though, with regard to people relocating. You know, much has been made over the years about the no state income tax in Nevada, all the Californians coming over for that. It'll be interesting to see if both Reno and Vegas see a perceptible bounce of Californians coming over, because as you pointed out, if you work from home, what does it matter? You might as well live in Vegas, you might as well live in Reno, and not pay the state income tax. That's going to be very interesting to see if that has long-term implications for the state budget and for some of the municipal budgets.
Especially in northern Nevada, we are seeing a lot of inquiries from California companies from Northern California because of all the lockdowns that are still occurring, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, where companies are saying, we just need to get out of here because, you know, we're basically prisoners in our own homes at this point. We already have a housing crunch where we need 50,000 new homes over the next 10 years. I think that number is going to go up exponentially. And what's been interesting at both ends of the state here, and I want to ask you about this for California, we're seeing the price of housing go up because there is such a shortage that even though we have the pandemic and the unemployment, the cost of housing is still rising. What's the cost of housing looking like in Southern California?
Yeah, listen, zero drop, limited inventory, everything you just said. You know, everybody anticipated, oh, there's going to be this terrible popping of the bubble. No, still extremely strong, no inventory. You put up the sign, you get 10 overbids. So Southern California, for whatever reason, has been very fortunate and blessed from a real estate standpoint. But I do think you're starting to see people who maybe are a couple years away from retirement, who are then looking at Texas, Nevada, the usual Sunbelt states, particularly those with no state income tax, because they say, hey, why am I killing myself to pay my mortgage and my property tax here when I can cash out at significant profit and take it elsewhere? I'll tell you one other funny story about that. I mentioned that I was flying Southwest. Last weekend, I was in Dallas at the Hotel Zaza, which is a kind of a swank hotel in the uptown neighborhood of Dallas. I ran into, just in the lobby when I was sitting there waiting to meet with someone, I ran into 4 sets of Californians, 4, who all mentioned where they were from. Some were from Northern California, some were from Southern California. But the reoccurring theme, Sam, that all of them said was that Dallas today and Texas today reminds them of what California used to be like. So that was a very interesting observation in the sense that as Californians do look to relocate, I think they want a place that's similar to what they're used to. And clearly that's a Nevada, that's a Texas, or one of the Sunbelt states like that.
I think another point that needs to be made is that even though we have high unemployment at this point in time, it still is balanced out by the number of people that are employed and that are making money. And news coverage tends to cover the negative rather than the positive. So we highlight the unemployment number, not the employed number. And I know they don't balance exactly. So if you have 20% unemployment, it doesn't mean to say there's 80% employment. But still, there's a lot of money in this economy.
Well, I think that's right. And I also think that there's ways to be employed, right? I mean, some people have found they've had to shift to an essential economy. That could be a healthcare related job, or one of the, food service or groceries. There's been a lot of talk about how the grocery workers have kept us going all these months. And, prior to the pandemic, they got very little attention, but wow, how dependent are we, right, on those folks that keep the Costco's and the grocery stores going? So I think that's true. If there was a realignment in how people are employed, I'm not sure that's such a bad thing. I have a friend who works in live theater. So for example, she has been unemployed. Obviously, Las Vegas has some of that too. Those folks are going to have to start to look to find other things to do. They can't just be unemployed for the duration of the pandemic, because we don't know how long this is going to go on. We understand their passion might be something like live theater, but that type of person is going to have to find something to do in this new economy. And I think we're already starting to see that.
Well, and to your point, I mean, Las Vegas has been completely devastated with as far as live entertainment goes. There is zero. We had tickets for a Sarah Brightman concert in October. It got canceled yesterday. And the Cirque shows are all down. I mean, there is literally no live entertainment. They've talked about individual shows like a Carrot Top, for example, where you could have a socially distanced room. But comedians around the country, not in Las Vegas yet, are playing in drive-in movie theater parking lots.
Yeah, no, I think, listen, the drive-in business is going to be legit, because I think it complies with everything you just said. It gives the performers a chance to perform. And, we were talking about how lonely everybody is. People want to go to shows. People want to do those kinds of things again. So if they can do it in a drive-in, and I don't know to what degree the large hotels can reconfigure their parking lots or what, but I do think, Sam, we're going to see more of that drive-in business model, because people are really hungering for that kind of entertainment.
And you bring up a good point. In discussions before we reopened up the casino industry, and they were talking about 50% slots in the spaces that they currently have. And I talked to a couple of marketing directors, and I said, if you're not going to be able to have a convention, is there a way with the Gaming Control Board to move some of those slot machines that you're going to have to shut down into your convention area, especially for local properties that have a small convention space? That way you can open up more slot machines and be able to pay the bills a little bit better than you would by not being able to do that. And so, you're absolutely right. There is huge amounts of space at casinos, for example, where they could do outdoor seating for all kinds of things, and yet we haven't really seen a big push to that. But let's take a break. We'll come back much more with Josh Gross after this timeout.
Hey guys, are you watching the game at a friend's or the bar again because you can't watch at home with your wife? Or worse, because she kicked you out and kept your couch, your flat screen, and your kids? What's the one thing a man needs when he loses a good woman? A good lawyer. And when he loses a bad woman, he needs a great lawyer. What makes a good woman a bad woman? You tell me. You're the one that can't watch the game in your own home. I'm men's rights attorney Marilyn York, and I represent men in divorce, custody, and family law matters.
Because of UMC, there's a wide open road ahead of me.
Because of UMC, she can grow up with her twin sister.
Because of UMC, I'm here to help you.
UMC, the highest level of care in Nevada.
The signs and symptoms of cataracts can start out small with subtle changes in your vision. So don't wait. Be proactive and take your vision into your own hands. If you're experiencing the onset of cataracts or just have questions, contact your eye care professional or call Eye Care Associates of Nevada today. Dr. Hiss has years of experience specializing in the surgical correction of eye disorders and has completed over 84,000 vision correcting procedures. At Eye Care Associates of Nevada, we'll change the way you look at the world.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Josh Gross. He is the publisher of Beverly Hills Weekly. You know, it's an interesting time politically, obviously, with all that's going on. And, you know, our governor is getting equal amounts of heat here in Nevada, as well as praise for his handling of the crisis. I hear a lot about Gavin Newsom and his handling of the crisis. And frankly, most of it that's coming our way is not positive. What is the sense on the ground in Southern California?
A lot of criticism of Governor Newsom, a lot of criticism of LA Mayor Eric Garcetti. And the reason is a lot of folks feel that some of the restrictions have not always made sense. I think the Nevada approach has been a little more reasonable. There was the cautious reopening of the casinos, but now that they're open, it seems to be working somewhat. And I think that provides a roadmap to really significantly open. I mean, look, if you can run a casino, Sam, and keep it open in a healthy way, then it seems to me there's ways to reopen some of these other businesses too. So I think the Nevada approach is a better way to go.
You know, it's been interesting because, you know, when you have a change of administration, say from Republican to Democrat or vice versa, you expect the pendulum to swing in the other direction and probably go too far and then come back towards the middle. And I think that that's what's happened, you know, in Nevada as well, is that we initially saw the pendulum swing way too far in one direction because people really didn't know what was going on. And you talk to the medical professionals at this point in time and you ask them, and they have changed the way that they are operating, you know, literally and figuratively. Things that they were concerned about at the beginning of the crisis, like ventilators, for example, they discovered fairly quickly that that was not necessarily the best way to go, that there were other ways to deal with the patients. We built all these emergency facilities for overflow from hospitals, thinking that we were going to be like New York City in some of those areas, which was tragic. But that did not turn out to be. Both in Reno and Las Vegas, those extended facilities were never used. Have you seen that kind of overbuilding in California as well?
Somewhat, but you know, 2 points to that. The first is that it's interesting that the medical professionals have learned that actually the new MO is to try to keep you off the ventilator as much as possible, because once you're on the ventilator, your chances of survival go way down. So the new treatments really emphasize trying to keep you off the ventilator. In terms of the approach and how people are approaching it, you know, here there's everybody from people that won't leave the house whatsoever to people who really want to go back to life as normal. And I think that's obviously a personal choice, but how long can we continue to have things closed? That's something I've been very critical of. My position is we need to at least try to get back to business as usual. And as we discussed before the break, if some employees get trained for new types of careers, that's okay. They can always go back to their old career if things get back to normal. But I think one thing we're sure of is we don't know when things are going to get back to normal.
All right, let's take another quick break and we'll be right back.
Dimitri Prine here for Design Outdoor. Are you a homeowner who's interested in remodeling or building a home? At Design Outdoor, we can show you how adding natural or manufactured masonry stone can add beauty and value to your home. And we refer only the best contractors. Our store and backyard are located at 11600 South Virginia, just north of DeMonte Ranch Parkway. Visit designoutdoor.com or call us at 851-9499.
Hey guys, are you watching the game at a friend's or the bar again because you can't watch at home with your wife? Or worse, because she kicked you out and kept your couch, your flat screen, and your kids? What's the one thing a man needs when he loses a good woman? A good lawyer. And when he loses a bad woman, he needs a great lawyer. What makes a good woman a bad woman? You tell me. You're the one that can't watch the game in your own home. I'm men's rights attorney Marilyn York, and I represent men in divorce, custody, and family law matters.
Hi, I'm Dave Newman. Remember me? I used to be the house detective, and now I'm a realtor, full-time at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates. A lot of people ask me, how's the market? You know what? It's fantastic. If you're even kicking around the idea of buying or selling, give me a call. Let's talk about it. Call me at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates and just ask for the guy who used to be the house detective, Dave Newman.
Everyone is talking about opioids, but they're not the only drugs that can be harmful if taken in large quantities or not as prescribed. You also need to be aware of side effects from anxiety drugs, muscle relaxants, sleep aids, and stimulants. Mixing prescription drugs with other drugs or alcohol can be dangerous. If you take an Ambien with a glass of wine, it may be enough to stop you from breathing. Prescribed drugs can be just as dangerous as illegal drugs. Take medications only as directed.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation, but a very brief one here with Josh Gross. He's the publisher of Beverly Hills Weekly. You know, with the immigration controls we've had in the last, or under the Trump administration, shutting down so much immigration to the country, this has really been beneficial in one way, which is that we don't have an overabundance of people available for jobs. So even though we've lost a lot of jobs, we don't have a huge pool of labor that's sitting there. Quick response on how that's affecting Southern California.
Well, you know, the Southern California economy has always been very diverse, and it has those at the top end and those at the bottom end. You know, I would say we haven't really noticed a significant impact about what you're talking about, but I do agree that the Los Angeles economy has always been dependent on immigrants and folks moving to the U.S., and it's going to be interesting to see. That's the kind of trend, Sam, I think we'll have to check in 2-3 years, really see if there's been an effect.
Absolutely, because things are changing by the hour, let alone by the day. Josh Gross, always a pleasure to see you, my friend. Hope to see you in the studio one of these days soon.
Great to see you, Sam.
Thank you, and we'll be right back. A bird's eye captures its surroundings at different heights. At Brian Culpa Photography, we can make your imagination soar over buildings, parks, cityscapes, and beyond. Brian's images tell the story and get the job done. If you need a new perspective to tell your story, contact Brian today. Brian Culpa Photography. Experience the bird's eye view at brianculpaphotography.com.
Hey, Dad? Are you learning? This place is great. Huh? You gotta try this.
Wow, this stuff is great. People are gonna love it.
Yes. Yes, they will.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
Take a look at Pro Group Management and see how your workers' comp requirements can be met head-on. By taking a proactive approach, Pro Group can assure that your company is meeting or exceeding state and federal standards. As you move forward in your industry, Pro Group moves with you, simplifying regulatory tasks, clearing the way so you can get the job done and look to your future success. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
As always, you can watch Nevada Newsmakers 24 hours a day at NevadaNewsmakers.com. We'll see you on the next show.